Hey, what's up, Spartan Nation? Welcome to another episode of the Spartan Nation Podcast. Here with your host, Matt Lonsberry, and my co host, Aiden Mulcrone. And Aiden, it's been an eventful day for Michigan State football. We're going to dig into that tonight, kind of at a new time. We don't usually start at 8 o'clock, but between some personal stuff between the two of us, and then Michigan State landing another commitment today on the recruiting trail. That pushed back the show a little bit, but we're excited to talk about just some of the latest developments with Michigan State football. And obviously, as always, we will take your comments and your questions, and we'll touch on those as we're able to. And then we will probably close the show tonight with a little bit of Michigan State basketball talk. Obviously, things not going in the right direction on the hardwood right now, and we'll dive into that as well. But first, Aiden, let's dig into this football news that came down today, and we'll start with the biggest news of the day, which was the commitment of a former four-star quarterback, Aidan Chiles, who played last year at Oregon State for head coach Jonathan Smith and the Beavers. Played in 9 games. Had a pretty high completion percentage in limited action. Threw for 4 touchdowns, no picks. Also a dual threat guy who can hurt teams with his legs. So I guess your reaction, to the news from today. I think this was expected by most of us. Michigan State was the perceived favorite for Aidan Chiles, even before he entered the portal, really, just because he spent 1 year at Oregon State with Smith and that coaching staff. So your reaction to Michigan State landing their guy at quarterback?
I agree. I think it was kind of a long time coming at this point once Smith got hired at Michigan State. So I think they got their guy. They got their quarterback of the future. Obviously, he was a freshman this year, so he's got 3 more years of eligibility, which is a positive. And if he's good enough, he'll only be here for 2 years. So we'll see. But yeah, they got their starting quarterback out of the transfer portal. Looking ahead, they still have to fill a couple more of those spots. So that's something that they also need to look forward to is where they're gonna find 2 more quarterbacks, whether it be still grab another player in the transfer portal or they go get 2 high school quarterbacks. So kind of looking to that. But yeah, Chiles seems like a lock to be the starter for next year and just the quarterback for the future. And Jonathan Smith, he's kind of hand picked him from the beginning, even out of high school, to be his guy, and they've had a close relationship. And I know the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach Brian Lindgren, also speaks highly of Chiles. So that's definitely something that fans should be looking forward to as a positive. But there still is a lot more work to be done in the transfer portal and recruiting trail.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just going to address this question from Todd Super Ginger in our comment sections. We've delved into Michigan State hockey a little bit, not as much as I would like, just because they're a top 10 team right now. But I do have Aiden's one of my freelancers. I do have another freelancer who's a Michigan State student who is helping me with hockey coverage a little bit here and there when he's able to. But I will say this: if they keep winning, they will probably start to get some more attention, and we'll start maybe delving into that a little bit more. Full disclosure here, I haven't watched a game yet just because, my focus has been mostly on football and men's basketball. But I did, like I said, we got another freelancer who covers hockey for us. And so, yeah, we're going to dive into that a little bit more maybe in the future. But yeah, I just wanted to address that question quick. All right, back at the topic at hand. This was kind of, when you start a rebuild, you kind of need that cornerstone piece, and that's what Chiles feels like here. He feels like the opening of the new era. Michigan State needed a potential difference maker at quarterback. We know how things went this year, and it wasn't just on the quarterbacks, but with Noah Kim, he struggled against Power 5 competition. He gets bent for Caden Hauser. We saw some good things out of Hauser, but a little bit of a lack in consistency, and I think that can be due to as much as the offensive line and a lack of running game as anything. But when you have a dual threat guy like Chiles, and obviously he hasn't proven himself as a college quarterback yet, but all the signs are there. I think that's fair to say that that he could be a difference maker back there. And I agree with you. I think it's interesting to see what Smith and Michigan State will do from this point forward to address the quarterback room, because they're certainly not done yet. I mean, you lost all three of your scholarship quarterbacks. You get one back here, and he's in line to be your starter, but you've got to fill in some depth. You've got to probably land another guy that's out of the transfer portal. And I know they're kind of in the weeds with some high school quarterbacks right now as well. Henry Hasselbeck, who was committed, he decommitted a couple weeks ago, and I think he took a recent trip to Boston College, or maybe he is this weekend. But there's another kid off the top of my head. I don't know the name of the kid. Maybe you do, Aiden, who is maybe trending a little bit. I think he was a Ball State commit.
Yeah, his name is like Al. It's very Eastern European.
Okay.
I think it's Allison or Alison Milihovic or something along those lines. It's very it's very Eastern European, but yeah.
Yeah, Alicio Milivojevic or something like that. Yeah. So he's committed to Ball State. But I know Michigan State is moving in there. So apologize for butchering that name, but we're making it up on the fly here a little bit. But yeah, so they're gonna add some more quarterback depth as this offseason continues. That's kind of the point we're trying to make here. We'll have to work on our pronunciation skills if they do end up flipping this kid from Ball State. But yeah, definitely. I think on the last podcast that we had, I said something along the lines of, there's been a ton of negative headlines for Michigan State football going back to middle of September when Tucker was suspended and then eventually fired. And it seemed like it was 90% negative headlines from that point forward. It felt that way anyway, as we were covering the team and doing our jobs. I think I said in the last pod that I think we're about to get to that point where you're starting to see some positive headlines again for Michigan State football. And that's kind of come to fruition over this last week. And with that, we'll kind of move into, we might revisit Chiles a little bit later, but with that, we'll move into some of the other stuff that's happened this week. Michigan State has landed 3 verbal commitments from guys who were previously committed to the staff at Oregon State. They decommitted. They took visits to East Lansing, and now they're set in line to become Spartans. A couple of running backs, 3-star running backs, Mekhi Frazier, and today, actually just before the show here tonight, that's kind of partially what delayed us tonight was they got another commitment from Brandon Tullis, who's another 3-star out of Texas. Not guys who jump out as far as like their recruiting rankings or anything like that, but I'm tell you what, like anytime you land a player from Texas, you feel pretty good about his potential for growth and all those things. So let's start with the running backs. Aiden, we'll talk about those a little bit. Michigan State also landed a tight end out of California. We'll get to Wyatt Hook later, but talk about the running backs a little bit. What do you like about these guys?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is Tullis and what I'm blanking on his name right now, Mekhi Frazier. I think the positive takeaway for them specifically are just MSU before Jonathan Smith came in. We're looking to get 2 running backs in this class. I know at one point Anthony Carey was committed to Michigan State, and Michigan State was also trending positively towards Jason Brown, which were 2 4-star guys. And now you bring in 2 3-star guys, but like you mentioned, they're both from Texas, so there is kind of like I guess stigma or but in a good way that
Sure.
Players from Texas do have a lot of upside and a lot of potential to be good. So I think that's a big thing. I think for Mekhi Frazier specifically, I think you look at his film and kind of the offense that he was in. I think he's a little bit more of a physical running back, which is I think that's something that was part of the reason why he was being recruited to Oregon State to begin with. And something that is very transferable from going to or being recruited by Oregon State and then transferable to, Big Ten football, and kind of the physicality that Jonathan Smith wants to play, but just kind of the culture of, Big Ten and just Michigan State in general and the success that they've had. Uh, I can't speak. I can't speak much about the other. I can't remember his name. Brandon Tullis
Brandon
right now.
Tullis.
Yeah, I can't speak much about him right now. I've not watched enough of his film to say that, but again, I'm gonna say it's probably gonna be the same kind of assets or same kind of net takeaways that Jonathan Smith and that staff is looking for are players who are physical. And you look at the running backs that they've produced kind of within the last 3-4 years at Oregon State have all been guys that, they don't have to work on the physicality. What they work on is kind of the speed. And that's something that seems to be a lot more teachable for them. But physicality can be hard to teach just by, telling a kid to go run into somebody that isn't always appealing to some. So I think the mental state there, I think that's part of what Jonathan Smith looks for in a recruit. And then Wyatt Hook again, tight end. I think, Ryan Wozniak, the new tight ends coach, I think he's doing a lot of house cleaning, I guess you could say. I think
Sure.
that tight end room is kind of like I think we've talked about it, this whole off season, before the season started and kind of during the season, is how many tight ends they have. And kind of it
Yeah.
seemed like they had a ton, but they weren't utilized in, maybe the best scenarios. So kind of figuring that out. Obviously we saw Malik Carr leave earlier this week. So I'm kind of interested to see where they go from there, and I know they're also looking at some transfer portal guys as well.
Right. And we can't we can't draw conclusions about what Michigan State's recruiting is going to look like under Jonathan Smith this year, just because, I mean, they're in salvage mode right now.
Mhm.
We've only got 6 days until the first signing period, which has become like the new national signing day. That's on December 20th. But before this, run of commitments this week, Michigan State was down to 7 verbal commits. I mean, that's less than a third, I think, of a class size that you're looking for.
Mhm.
Especially in a case like Michigan State, where you've got so many guys entering the transfer portal. Like, you've got a lot of scholarships to fill and a lot of spots on the depth chart to fill. And so I would caution people not to, draw conclusions about, the type of recruit that Jonathan Smith is going to bring in the years ahead, based on this year, just because, again, they're in salvage mode. I think we'll find out maybe a little bit more going into the second signing period, which is in February. But again, at that point, the pool has been whittled down quite a bit after that initial signing period. So again, in salvage mode here. But I will say about Smith and his coaching staff, they have a proven track record of being developmental, a good developmental program at Oregon State. That's a program who, struggled in the first couple years under Smith, but slowly built. And then we kind of saw the fruits of that labor these last 2 seasons, when they went 10-3 last year, 8-4 so far this year, against in a tough Pac-12 schedule, and going to a bowl game against Notre Dame, which is a really weird bowl game this year, just because there's been so much roster turnover for both of those teams. It's going to be almost practice squad on practice squad. It seems like that way. I kind of have a
Mhm.
theory or a thought on this as well. Like, the state of bowl games these days, it seems like to me, like, if I had to describe it, it's like a lot of these bowl games have almost become like the new spring game, in my opinion. And I don't like
Yeah.
that, because I used to really enjoy bowl season, and I'll still watch a lot of the Power Five matchups this year, but they've just been reduced so much due to the transfer portal and players opting out, and all those things. So unfortunate to see that, but that's kind of the state of where it's at right now. But back on track here. Like I said, proven track record for Smith with development, and that's kind of getting back to Again, not trying to make too many comparisons here, but that was what Mark D'Antonio and his staffs did so well for such a long time at Michigan State, was finding those under or overlooked recruits and bringing them into the program, developing them over 2 to 3 years into 4 years, and then taking a 3-star kid and turning him into an all Big Ten caliber player. And so maybe that's what we're going to see under this coaching staff as well. Too early to tell, but again, it is good to see those positive headlines again.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, especially just kind of everything that came through, October, kind of with the whole Mel Tucker situation, without the whole Mel Tucker situation, the product on the field as well. I think we all had questions before the offseason, and then
Sure.
kind of, the floodgates kind of broke open in October after that whole situation broke. So yeah, I think it's good that there's some positive momentum and some positive takeaways. I do think I think they also announced that their football facility will be finally finished with renovations and fully open next week. So I think that's another thing that they can sell when, talking to recruits, when talking to transfers, as a selling point for this program, is they just got a brand new facility. They got a brand new coach who has a proven track record to kind of build from the ground up, and has also been at other places that have won and been at the highest level, like Washington. So I think there's a lot to like. I think the staff has really put forth a lot of effort into recruiting the Midwest. I think that was the biggest thing, the biggest question about what this staff would look like. And I think they've tried to assess that immediately. And I think that's definitely something big. And, obviously we'll see in September, because they do have a bit of a difficult schedule. We'll see what that looks like on the field. But I think sitting here in December, yeah, I think there are more positives than negatives within the past month.
Yeah, no, I agree. Junior, just wanted to let you know that we're kind of catching up on Brandon Tillis right now. We haven't, as Aiden said a little earlier, I think before you jumped in, haven't watched a whole lot of film on the kid yet. But we did talk about the fact, being a 3-star out of Texas is a little bit different than being a 3-star out of Connecticut or Idaho or one of those others. Like you feel pretty good about kids who are coming out of Texas as far as their ability to be developed. They take football pretty seriously down there. So obviously positive news. Gotta find out a little bit more about the kid before we can kind of go in depth there. He does ask a good question about Aidan Chiles. He asks, is he going to be the default starter, or will Smith have to sell competition, get depth at the quarterback position? I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of a as Jonathan Smith and the staff continues to look in the portal, like they're going to have to at least have the. And I don't think like Aidan Chiles, he is a sophomore. Like this is his second year in college. We know that he is highly regarded. He was very highly rated coming out of high school. He is the perceived favorite, no doubt, like front runner to win the job. Right now, he has no competition. There's no other scholarship quarterbacks on the roster at the moment. But yeah, like they're gonna. I'm sure they're gonna sell the thought of a competition going forward, and we'll see who else they bring in as well. Maybe it is a veteran who's a grad transfer or from a lower level or a group of 5 level. We don't know. So yeah, I think there will be competition. I think that's healthy. I think it's good. And yeah, we look forward to seeing who else the coaching staff is able to bring into the fold. As far as Dante Moore, and after that, like initial, it seems like there was a little bit of initial Michigan State buzz when he first entered the portal, but that kind of disappeared fairly quickly. I know he's been linked to Michigan a little bit, and there was originally some Oregon buzz as well, but Oregon just landed, Dylan Gabriel out of the transfer portal, so hard to imagine maybe Dante Moore goes to Oregon with Dylan Gabriel already in the fold there. I know Dante was initially committed to Oregon before he ultimately ended at UCLA. So I'm not sure about Dante Moore. If the realistic, I don't think is very realistic at this point. Yeah, I think he's looking to go somewhere to either compete for a starting job or be developed, as you say in the comment section. So nothing to add there. Any other thoughts from you on Aiden Chiles, the commitment, or maybe what the expectations should be for him, given the fact that he is a sophomore and has not been a starter yet, but has a lot of potential.
Yeah, I think the potential thing is huge. I think, yeah, it's just kind of being sold on potential. The roster that's going to be built around him is really what's going to determine his success, in my opinion. I think, if they have an offensive line that is fixed or kind of trending in a better direction, and they have a run game that they can rely on at times, I think that sets him up for success a lot more. Also finding receivers, they still need to look for guys because they did lose Tyrell Henry and Jerron Glover. So yeah, and I think with the transfer portal, kind of what's the selling point on that? I think you have to sell competition in some way.
Yeah.
And I think kind of the Dante Moore, I think I would say no kind of indefinitely right now, just because he and Childs also are in the same class. So I think if MSU
Right.
added maybe a graduate transfer, and then you could sell Dante Moore on, maybe you compete for a spot, and if you lose it, you still have 2 more years, or but I think MSU is going to be looking for, like you said, probably a lower level quarterback from even a FCS kind of guy, maybe
Sure.
even a D2 if they even go that far deep into it. So just kind of looking for those guys who are probably going to be graduate transfers that just want to experience playing at the highest level. So I think that's what they're looking for in the transfer portal. And then they do have uh along with the Ball State quarterback whose name I don't want to butcher again. They
Yeah.
also have another quarterback that's on an official visit this weekend, committed to Nebraska. I want to say his name's like Brenson or I don't remember, but he's committed to Nebraska right now. Nebraska is having some quarterback turnover and
Sure.
some rumors of landing Dylan Raiola, who's the number one player in the country. So yeah, so it seems like his spot is being kind of used elsewhere. So he's looking at his other options too. So I think ideally you want to have 3 quarterbacks, or even 4 on scholarship. But with transfer portal and guys leaving, I think the best you can do is 3. But if you're in 2 and it's just Childs and a true freshman, I think that's a really sticky situation. So
Yeah, for sure.
um figuring that out, because we did see this season what it's like when you're down to only 2 quarterbacks. And that didn't end well. So
For sure. And even like we've talked about an FCS possibility, a quarterback from that level,
mm,
or a group of 5. I think a guy with experience who's just looking to move up the level, that's better than even even if you could swing big and land some kind of 4-star high school recruit. I think a guy with experience, you need that in a backup role, or even to push Aiden Chiles a little bit. I think competition could be good for him as well. It's not just you're not just selling the idea of competition to get somebody to come in. I think anytime you're pushed by a teammate, it just makes you better. So I think that could be good for him as well. Eggplant has a couple of questions here. Welcome to the show. Um, I don't know that Aiden Chiles committing to Michigan State impacts the Bryce Underwood quarterback situation a whole lot. Michigan State would be way behind as of now anyway. I think the only thing that could begin to close that gap would be number one. If he hit it off great with Jonathan Smith, I don't even know do you know, Aiden, if Jonathan Smith has really even reached out a whole lot with I haven't heard
No,
anything, but
Bryce Underwood, yeah. So Bryce Underwood already set a commitment date and
okay.
kind of already narrowed down his school. So it's, yeah. I think it's pretty much down to LSU and Colorado at this point. So
Okay. So yeah, like you'd have to, and quarterbacks do typically commit earlier than other players. They like to kind of be the leaders of those recruiting classes typically. So yeah, don't get your hopes up there. I am glad that you brought up the interior offensive lineman and the transfer portal, because this was becoming a really, really big area of concern for me, just as the offseason kind of got started. Michigan State got up to, I think, 7 offensive linemen who entered the transfer portal at one point. And on the surface, you might think, well, their offensive line wasn't very good anyway, so what's the big deal? Well, that's a lot of depth to lose in one off season, and it's tough to build an O-line as it is. You lose all of that depth, and you're essentially starting from scratch. But 3 of those 7 have since withdrawn their names from the transfer portal. Brandon Baldwin, who was one of the tackles, I think maybe the left tackle, he started multiple games this year. He withdrew his name. Ethan Boyd, who got a handful of starts at right tackle this year. One of the more promising, I would say, offensive line prospects for Michigan State, he withdrew his name. I think that was the biggest of the withdrawals for the Spartans. I think he's going to be in line to potentially earn a starting job next year. And then Christian Phillips was the third one who withdrew his name. Haven't seen a whole lot of him. He played in 11 games this year, but I think most of that was on special teams, either on field goals or extra points or things of that nature. So, but again, a guy who's just a redshirt freshman, good size. I think all 3 of those guys over 300 pounds, and Phillipson's included in that. So at least some pieces for Michigan State's new offensive line coach, Jim. Is it McKelsick or something similar to that? Again, we're gonna have to work on these names going forward, but we'll practice those as we go forward. But I do think that it's good for him to have some pieces to work with from the previous regime, and then they'll go out. They'll probably try to bring in a couple of transfer offensive linemen as well, and we'll see what they're able to do with the recruiting class as well. But again, building offensive line, I would argue maybe the most difficult thing to do on the football field as far as like roster building. O-line is probably way up there as far as the most difficult. It takes time, it takes development. It's hard to land on kids in the high school ranks, just because it's a little bit of a crapshoot. Like obviously you've got your 5-star guys who are expected to eventually contribute down the road. But like even from 4 stars to 3 stars, there's not a very wide gap of variation, it seems like, with the offensive line. So any thoughts on the O-line situation, Aiden? Again, it was getting a little dicey there, but the ship has kind of leveled a little bit over the last couple of days.
Yeah, I think I do think that Jim Maselchek, however you say his name, I think he is well known around the football community as a really good O-line coach. He's been in the NFL before. He's been at multiple stops in college. He was up for the Broyles Award, which is the top assistant coach in the country this year. They Oregon State has really went through they built that program back up from nothing. They were 1-11 and I think 2-10 the 2 seasons before Jonathan Smith and that staff came there. And they've really built that up. And so the question really is can they do that at another stop? And kind of to what extent, and if he stays longer than the 5 years that he was at Oregon State, can he reach higher heights and at in a better conference? I know maybe not this year, but in a stronger conference right now, or for the near future, obviously with the Pac-12 dissolving. So
yeah,
that's really the question. So just kind of still, can he still identify talent and develop that, and whether that's in the portal or the guys who are still here, because we did see, like you said, we did see three guys pull their names out of the transfer portal and stay. So I'm guessing the meetings with the coaching staffs went well, and that they do feel more comfortable now that Smith has been here, and he's kind of starting to build his staff. And the more time that they stay here, maybe the more more players come back. So yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah, just to add that a little bit, as we said earlier, a proven track record for Jonathan Smith and his assistant coaches over at Oregon State. Did a good job over there. I think it's one of those situations where I think Michigan State fans will have to be patient. We talked about this a little bit in the last pod that we're kind of we're trying to keep expectations low a little bit, just not letting expectations get too crazy. In this off season going into next year, we both think that competing for a bowl game is right where that kind of line is right now for this program, and obviously a lot has to happen between now and September when we get started again here. And it would be irresponsible for us to make any kind of predictions. Like, we're not doing any kind of predictions or anything like that. We're just talking about the current state of affairs here. But again, this week has been kind of a nice first step for the program. To kind of put a wrap on football talk here, let's get into the defensive coordinator hire a little bit. That happened a couple days ago. Michigan State is bringing in Joe Rossi from Minnesota. He was the defensive coordinator under PJ Fleck for the last 5+ years, I believe. And has led some really good units with the Golden Gophers. I think 3 times Minnesota finished in the top 10 in yards allowed per game. I know they've been up there at least twice in the top 10 for points allowed per game. So a couple of good units that he's built or orchestrated at Minnesota. Michigan State brings him over. I've seen some praise of the hire from some national guys, not just local reporters. I think I've seen Kirk Herbstreit talk about it, how it was a great hire for Michigan State. I think I've seen Bruce Feldman, who's one of the most plugged in college football analysts. He was complimentary of the hire. So your thoughts, Aiden, on Joe Rossi as the defensive coordinator as Jonathan Smith continues to fill out this coaching staff?
Yeah, I think it's a good hire on paper. I think, Minnesota did struggle this year. I think they struggled defensively specifically, but, was not kind of the root of their problems, but he has had success. Everyone mentions the top 10 defenses in back-to-back years in 2021 and 2022. So I think there's a lot to like based off of potential with him. Kind of filling out the rest of that defensive staff is really important right now, and kind of what players can they retain and what kind of talent can they bring in, because I do think that was part of the reason why Minnesota's defense struggled last season was they lacked defense, or they lacked the talent that they had in previous years, because he did produce I think it was 10 NFL draft picks or something in the from 2020 to 2022. So they didn't really have that NFL level talent, or just didn't seem to develop it this year. But I do think it's definitely a guy who needs some fresh air, I think, and in a new place that he can get better talent in. I think that's definitely a good opportunity. And kind of just the defense schematically, I think that's important, because a lot of teams now are switching to that kind of flex, like 3-4, that can transform into a 4-2 defense, or a 3-3, that it's kind of a jack of all trades sort of defense. So I think that's really important. I know Georgia runs it. I think they've been really effective kind of the last few years, the way that they've played. So I think that's really important. Just kind of thinking towards modern times. I think a lot of MSU's thinking, not only in the Mel Tucker era, but at the end of the Mark D'Antonio era, I think a lot of their schemes like ran stale, which kind of hurt them in some areas because they did have good talent, but their scheme kind of ran stale. And I think the fact that Jonathan Smith went and made a kind of out of the box hire, and hired a guy that he's never worked with, I think that speaks to him as a coach, and just kind of he wants to win and he kind of wants to move with the times too. So I think that that's a big deal.
Yeah, I just want to address this comment in the comment section. According to 24/7 Sports, Aiden Chiles was the number one quarterback in the portal. So Ben, appreciate the comment. Not sure if you're giving your own opinion, or maybe you've seen lists from On3 or Rivals or something like that. But I got the graphic right here, and there's Aiden Chiles at the top. So just wanted to point that out, that he, according to 24/7 Sports, he was the number one quarterback in the transfer portal. Just pointing that out. So. Yeah, no, I got to be honest, I didn't know a whole lot about Joe Rossi before Michigan State made the hire. We've watched plenty of Big Ten football, and so have been aware of Minnesota, and they've had some good seasons under PJ Fleck. I knew defensively they were solid. I just didn't know the name of the defensive coordinator. So yeah, I think it's a good hire for Michigan State, and I defer my opinion to the opinions of a Kirk Herbstreit or a Bruce Feldman as well, and both of those guys very very complimentary. And so yeah, now there 8 of the 10 on-field assistant positions have been filled. I'm thinking of which positions haven't been. I think maybe a cornerback.
Linebackers.
I thought Joe
Yeah.
Rossi was going to be the linebackers coach as
Oh,
well
maybe
as the
maybe he
DC.
was.
But corners, maybe. I think Blue Adams is going to take safeties. I think Smith plans to bring in somebody to coach cornerbacks. And I think the other would have to be on the defensive side of the ball too. I don't know if maybe another D-line coach, a defensive end coach, something of that nature. And I still don't think we know who's going to run special teams for Michigan State, which we know was a point of contention throughout the not just last year, but going back a ways. Drew brings up Harlan Barnett. We haven't seen anything official with Harlan Barnett as far as him being retained. We did get confirmation from the university a couple of days ago about Courtney Hawkins being retained as the wide receivers coach. Nothing set in stone yet with Harlan Barnett. I know it's been out there. It's been rumored for a while. It seemed like it was going to be, I won't say a done deal, but just the rumors and the speculation for a while was that that's kind of where things were trending. I don't know if something changed. I don't know if Harlan this is pure speculation, if he's maybe looking for a year off after everything that went on this year. I don't know. Like that's all could be in the card. So I haven't heard anything yet. I haven't heard anything for a while regarding Harlan Barnett. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, most of the coaching staff has been filled. I think the entire offensive staff has been filled. So the pieces are getting put together here for the football program, and we'll be following along as that continues. Let's touch on a couple more of the transfer portal entries for Michigan State, Aiden, and then we'll move into some basketball to kind of close out the show tonight. I can't remember when guys entered in relation to our last podcast, but I don't think we've talked about Malik Carr. I'm pretty sure we haven't talked about Jacoby Windman. So I guess I think of the two, Windman was a little bit more surprising just because I thought he might declare for the NFL draft. But given the fact that he missed most of this season with injury, I guess not entirely surprising. But your reaction, I guess, to these two guys entering the portal?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised by Windman as well, just because again, like I would think he'd enter the draft at this point. I think he has enough good film, not only from kind of I think it was 10 or 11 games that he played at MSU, but the film that he had at UNLV was also really good, which kind of landed him at MSU. So there's that aspect. I'm sure there's a lot of schools that are contacting him to for interest. I think Malik Carr. Um, I think a lot of people were upset with his, the post that he made
Yeah.
to entering the transfer portal because he did kind of have some subliminal or like underlying messages in that post about his time at MSU. I don't remember the exact words, but I do remember that some people were a little flustered, I guess you could say, about what he said. So I think obviously, I think it goes both ways. I think a lot of people from MSU were frustrated with him, and I think he was frustrated with the people from MSU. So I think I hope he finds a good landing spot. I don't know where that may be. I think he has the talent, but kind of the film and kind of the effort kind of seeming to be inconsistent. I think that's something that may hold him back from getting some better offers than he may get in the transfer portal. But I don't know. Someone may take a chance on him, and it may work out great. So we'll see.
Yeah, Malik is definitely a different cat, if you will. Like he kind of
Mhm.
goes by the beat of his own drum, which is fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I do think like when he tweeted out officially in the transfer portal, or I'm in the transfer portal, and had like the crying laughing emoji, which was just kind of weird and odd, but that's kind of a little bit his personality. I think that's probably things like that, or things of that nature. Were probably maybe one of the reasons why he and Ted Gilmore, the tight ends coach, kind of butted heads, through
Mhm.
his time at Michigan State. He came across as a guy who he said oftentimes, like, I'm just here, I just want to have fun. Like, I'm here to have fun. I don't take things too seriously. And again, different people have different personalities. When you're losing as a team and as a fan of the program, and you're watching the team losing, that kind of rubs people the wrong way, and that's understandable as well. So it will be interesting to see where he ultimately lands. And in his wording, when he put out his, all these guys put out graphics now when they enter the transfer portal, and their statements and whatnot. He did have in there that he will be going somewhere else. He put that in writing. Again, until the name's on the dotted line, you don't know that, but that's a pretty good indication that he is ready to find a new environment outside of East Lansing. So, yeah, again, lingering on Carr a little bit, just because we talked about him a lot over these last couple of years, and it's just because all this potential that he had. I think we saw as much of that as we have seen throughout his career. This last year, he dealt with some injuries, but when he was healthy and when he was in the game, he made a big impact for Michigan State. At the beginning of that Iowa game, we talked about it, how they were almost force feeding him the ball. We lost Aiden, but he'll come back eventually, getting back to our normal routine here of losing Aiden in the stream. But again, Carr was utilized a lot in that Iowa game before he gets hurt. There, he's back. We got it out of the way, Aiden.
Time.
Uh, every time, except for last show. Last show
Except except last show.
we got through last show without losing you, but and then was it the Indiana game where he had the game winning Carr had the game winning touchdown
Mhm.
and made a big impact in that game as well. So again, we saw that potential and stuff come to fruition a little bit. Would have liked to seen it more. But now it will be on a different coaching staff to try to draw that potential out of him, and he's always had the goal of playing in the NFL. So maybe that's the thought here: is that let's go somewhere where I can get prepared for that next level, where I still have a chance to get there. As far as Windman, um, a guy that I liked just listening to when he did, post game press conferences, or even during the week leading up to a game. He was one of the more vocal leaders of this team, especially last year. He kind of flew under the radar this year because he missed most of the year with injury, but seems like a good dude, a mature guy. And I can't believe, like, as I'm writing up the story about when he entered the portal, and I'm getting that out on our Facebook page and things like that. He only played in 11 games as a Spartan, which is just wild because he made such a big impact in just
Mhm.
a limited amount of time, with all those forced fumbles a year ago, and it was just a playmaker. So sad to see. Not again, we're not really surprised by anybody entering the portal at this point, just because of the turnover and the transition. But yeah, wish the best for him going forward. All right, Aiden, we're 45 minutes in. Um, let's close things down here, talking a little bit of basketball to end the show. It's funny, like I had this thought as we were going through a different topic, but um, in the wake of the Mel Tucker suspension and then firing and all that, that we had some down shows where we had to talk about the state of the football program, and then we usually ended the show with, well, let's talk a little bit about basketball to give a little optimism. Now here we are in the
Yeah.
middle of December, and we're ending the show talking about basketball. We're not feeling very good about it after talking about a little bit of optimism with football. So things have flipped on their head, and not in the best of ways. But we do have to talk about, Drew Kuliker says, there goes the viewers talking about basketball. But we would be not doing our jobs if we didn't touch on some things. So let's talk a little bit about Nebraska, the Nebraska loss, and then we'll talk a little bit of preview of this Saturday against Baylor in Detroit. So for me, Aiden, I think the biggest takeaway from the loss to Nebraska, a couple different things. Um, Maybe it's just uh, a blind faith from me, and in the fact that Michigan State usually figures things out under Tom Izzo and all of that. But as I'm watching that game, um, Nebraska threw in some crazy threes in the first half to kind of stay attached to Michigan State. Didn't let Michigan State take control because of those threes that they threw in. It's a 3-point game at halftime, but kind of the whole time, I was thinking to myself, okay, Michigan State's going to win this game. They're going to win this game. They're going to find a way to pull it out, and then they just didn't. And that was disappointing. It was surprising. I do think we talked about needing to see a different level of effort from Michigan State on the last pod. I think we did see that for the most part. But it wasn't an effort thing. It was just some breakdowns defensively. They went into some lulls on offense, like as we've seen in the past. And so that was one of the things. Just really thought Michigan State was going to pull that game out. Didn't happen that way. And then the other big takeaway was just the total lack of production they're getting from their big men right now, and it's become a huge problem. Aiden, talk about that a little bit. I'm going to grab a water because I got a dry throat
Yeah,
going on. But
definitely. I mean, I think from what we saw against Nebraska, I think we did see good shooting from the team. I thought we saw that with Akins. I think he got the ball a little bit more. That was something that I voiced my opinion about. Is I thought he should be getting the ball more, and I think he did. I thought Fears played well. I thought Carr gave some meaningful minutes. I think Malik Hall has games where we talk about the consistency with Malik Hall every time, and this was a game where, hey, okay, he's gonna have 20 plus points, and he's gonna shoot 75% from the field, and it feels like MSU wasted kind of a good game by Malik Hall, but there was a lot more to that, and the rebounding woes are just gonna continue to happen. And I think post game, Izzo gave some mixed emotions about, or some kind of some mixed remarks about kind of who's playing and who's not. And he did say, like, hey, Booker can get some more time, but he's not the savior. And I think that rubbed some people the wrong way, just because it can't really get much worse.
yeah,
So the fact that he's just not even playing at all, I think that bothers some fans, that he would even say that. But yeah, like you said, I think you're not the only person. I feel like I have, along with many others, have given Izzo the benefit of the doubt. You know, kind of that he'll figure it out come January, or league play, or they'll be ready for March. But right now they're not even in the tournament, and
right.
they're they're sitting dead last in the Big Ten. which, I can't even remember the last time that was, they were last in the Big Ten. So I think that's something to really worry about. And just, at this point, if it really is a season that you're going to write off, I think you have to just stick with the younger guys, and you have to, play all those young guys. I think you have to do what you can to keep Booker, because, you know, back, maybe 10 years ago, you could say that about Xavier Booker, about, he needs to do practice better and do all these better habits. But in this day and age, I feel like if you say something like that, he'll transfer. Whether,
Yeah.
it could be justified. It feels like it is justified for Xavier Booker to leave right now, but just that's just the day and age, justified or not. I think, a lot of those players who feel that way, and, kind of feel like, they're not playing as much as they should be, that they end up leaving.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly the fear. Like
Mhm.
as you mentioned, that's the nature of things nowadays. Not saying that we're to that point, but that is, again,
Mhm.
it's always in the back of your mind just because of the way things operate now. But I will say, you're right. Like it doesn't get much worse than two centers who play and they combine for 2 points and 3 rebounds. Like that's pathetic. Like
Mhm.
that's not good enough. It's not even close to the realm of good enough. And we've talked about this. I don't want to beat a dead horse because we've talked about it before, but we both like Carson Cooper as a prospect, as a defensive center. He is only a sophomore, but at this point, it's pretty clear that he's not a starting center caliber in the Big Ten. And as far as Madi Sissoko, I've said this for a while now, is that I view him as a rotational piece and somebody who can come in, um, defend the post, use up some fouls against Zach Edey or somebody like that, and give you some minutes here and there. But again, not a starting caliber Big Ten center. We'll see what happens when Jackson Kohler comes back, but again, we talked about this in the last show that he's got to get back into game shape, and it's gonna take him some time. So I guess the point where I'm at right now is, why not just throw Xavier Booker out there? Like, yeah, he's
Right.
undersized, or not really undersized, but he's underweight a little bit, and he might get bullied a little bit. Who knows? It might toughen him up to be humbled a little bit at times, and maybe he'll respond in a positive way to it. Like, we don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we've been this way as long as we've had a show. We're not saying that we know better than Izzo. We're not at practice, but shoot, like, what do you have to lose at this point to just
Right.
throw him out
Right.
there, see what he can bring. Um, Maybe he stretches the floor a little bit at times for an AJ Hogard to dribble drive, or Tyson Walker off the catch in a quick drive off of that, if he's spacing the floor a little bit. Maybe he does bring you a little bit of offense from the low post. Um, I'm just ready to see him at this point because we've seen a
Mhm.
lot of Carson Cooper, we've seen a lot of Madi Sissoko, and we have a pretty good idea of what to kind of expect from those guys. They've had some decent outings this year. It hasn't been all bad, but it's been pretty consistently less than what you would expect out of a starting Big Ten center. So interested to see what it looks like this Saturday against Baylor. That would be a tough game. Like, the kid hasn't played the last two games, Booker. So it
Mhm.
would be tough to get your first, not your first, but like get your feet back wet again against a team that's in the top 10 right now. But hey, at this point, would love to see him part of the rotation at the 5, and just see what he brings. Um, with that, let's move into looking ahead a little bit at Baylor. I'm going to be honest with you. I have not watched a ton of college basketball yet this season. For me, I cling to college football as long as I can. And for one thing, when the season ends, especially when you go through a coaching transition, it's been almost busier these last couple of weeks or than it was during the season, just because
Mhm.
there's so much to do. There's transfer portal out. You're following offers that go out to people who are in the transfer portal. You're following high school recruiting. We're following coaching decisions and hires at the different position groups. So there's a lot going on right now. I haven't transitioned into basketball entirely, so I have not seen Baylor play. I'll just say that right now. But they're in the top 10, And Baylor has been historically over the last several seasons a team that's competed in the NCAA tournament. So it's going to be a tough challenge. I will say, um, college basketball is so crazy nowadays where it does seem like on any given night, I know it's a cliche, but on any given night, anybody can beat anybody. Um,
Mhm.
Northwestern got off to a pretty solid start this year. They just lost to Chicago State or something like that. Like we've seen a lot of upsets already this season. And so what I'm getting at is this is also an opportunity for Michigan State. You got Baylor coming from Texas all the way up to Detroit. It's a home away from home game for Michigan State. Their backs are against the wall. A win in this game would alleviate, I think, a lot of the tension. It wouldn't solve all the problems, like not even close. But as you mentioned, right now Michigan State's not even projected to make the tournament. It's too early to be thinking about that kind of thing, but that's just the reality of it. Was preseason they were a number one seed. Now they're out of the field. Um, Flipping things around and getting a win in Detroit on Saturday would, I think, alleviate a lot of that tension. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think any win at this point would alleviate something. Maybe, but yeah, I think that would alleviate a lot of tension. I think there's a lot of buildup. I think even before kind of MSU started kind of struggling, that there was some buildup to this game, and I think even after, I think there's a lot of buildup still, just because you have the MSU game, and I know a lot of people who are going to both the MSU game and then the Lions game after, and I think
Okay.
that because they're both in Detroit on Saturday, so I think there is a lot of buildup, and I think people are excited for it, and I think MSU, I think the team just yeah, they really need to ride off that momentum again. Kind of like we talked about, they got a whole week off. Basically, their last game was Sunday. They have there's finals this week, and then they play on Saturday. So, I mean, that gives them enough time to prepare. But kind of how are they going to come out? I think that was what we were worried about against Nebraska. Is we wanted to see how Michigan State would come out and see if they gave better effort and were a lot stronger. And it did seem like they gave better effort against Nebraska than they did um, before, but I think what they lacked though was, stuff that we've had concerns about. So like,
Yeah.
the rebounding, the kind of the defense, I think, the 3-point shooting is gonna fall in line at that, or at least that's what it looks like. But kind of the underlying questions that we had before the season, I think that's starting to show itself a little bit more and could be worse than we thought. Or maybe MSU, they needed that 6 days off and that it's better than they thought. Or they improved and tried to fix it. So
Yeah, that was sorry, excuse me. That was part of the disappointment, I think, going back to the Wisconsin game, and
mhm.
then there was another significant. It seemed like no. There was maybe only a couple days between Wisconsin and Nebraska, but there was a longer layoff going into that Wisconsin game. And again, we talked about this last show, but was just surprising with how little energy that Michigan State brought to that game, given the fact that it was the Big Ten opener. You're at home in front of the Breslin Center crowd in the Big Ten opener, so I just was surprised by the lack of juice from the team. Again, I don't think that was missing against Nebraska. They're certainly going to need it on Saturday against a very quality opponent in Baylor. So we will see what it looks like on Saturday. Again, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if Michigan State is able to pull this out and get a big W. I tried to look up the point spread. I couldn't find one for Saturday's game, but yeah, a win again would alleviate a lot of the tension. A loss would dig you a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper hole to dig out of to get back into tournament contention and all that stuff. Which again, you've got to go through the whole Big Ten schedule. There's going to be plenty of opportunities for resume building, but at some point you've got to start stacking some wins together. So Mark Cuthbert asks about the Draymond Green situation, and I think he's been ejected 3 times already this season by the NBA, which is a lot. The season's not that old. What will be about 24, 25 games into it, maybe less.
Yeah.
I know the Pistons have lost 21.
I was
going
to say, however many losses the Pistons have, and then add 2.
Yeah, exactly. So Pistons have lost 21 in a row. So that's how I'm keeping track.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna be honest. I did not see this latest one from a couple nights ago. I did see the one with, was it Rudy Gobert that he had it in the headlock? Which, I mean, everybody's kind of got an opinion on Rudy Gobert after he was the face of the COVID outbreak a little bit in the United States because of his touching all of the recording devices, and then a couple days later he tests positive for COVID. So that's, I mean, not making light of COVID and everything with the pandemic, but I don't know, a little bit of irony there maybe, and Draymond being on the other end of that. But yeah, I mean, I think at this point we kind of know the type of how do I want to say this? We know what Draymond brings to the table. He's a fierce competitor. He's a guy that you want with you in the foxhole. He's not a guy that you want to be staring across the field at in the opposing foxhole. I've got no real problem with it. Like, some of the antics with the kicking guys in the groin and things like that. Like, I'm not on board with that, but like he's playing hard, and I do appreciate the fact that Draymond is a little bit of a throwback competitor. I think the NBA needs a few more guys like Draymond Green, to be frank, because a lot of these guys are buddies now. Which again, I get that they play a lot together in the summer. I think the faces of that were kind of like a LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Chris Paul, and then maybe even Chris Bosh a little bit too. There, where they were, at the time, playing for different teams. LeBron was in Cleveland, Dwayne's down in Miami, Chris Paul, New Orleans, and then LA. So a little bit more, a little bit different of a NBA culture nowadays for sure. Certainly, if you go back to the Jordan years and the Bad Boys Pistons, far cry from what it was back then. So I did hear that some people didn't think it was that big of a deal, but again, I didn't see the video. So did you see it, Aiden? What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, he had, it was Nurkic was defending him, and he just had Draymond had his back to him, and then he just turns around and kind of jabs. He just flailed his arm just straight into his face. And honestly, I think the fact that he's suspended indefinitely for this,
yeah,
I mean, that's fine, but I'm kind of surprised that he wasn't suspended indefinitely for the Rudy Gobert stuff. So, I mean, they pulled out the whole proven track record and all this other and everything that he's done already in the league. But I was kind of like, if you were going to suspend him indefinitely, you might as well have done that for the Gobert incident rather than this incident. But
and that maybe that did play into it a little bit as well, just because I don't know, maybe Adam Silver looked at that and thought, well, maybe I should have come down a little bit harder, and then so any excuse to rectify that maybe going forward and try to send a message. To be frank, like, I don't know if you're gonna get a message through to Draymond Green. Like, he kind of is the guy that he is. And it's what's made him, as far as like Michigan State, most of the Michigan State fandom is adores Draymond for what he brought to this program and just all of those great seasons he had here. So yeah, it's fun to look at. I've tried to write some Draymond stories for our website when something like this happens, but they don't do all that good of traffic for whatever reason. So I don't know. I think maybe the Michigan State fan base is more understandably locked in on the current goings on with the programs. But with that, Aiden, I think we're over an hour here. We won't bludgeon the basketball topic anymore until we have something maybe a little more positive to talk about. Maybe that happens this weekend when Michigan State plays Baylor. Um, thanks you guys for tuning in. If there's any other questions, we'll hang around a little bit longer to have if you have any more questions and we'll answer those. But if there's not, we'll go ahead and get out of here. But yeah, any other thoughts, Aiden, on anything that we've talked about tonight? Giving some chance to answer some questions if anybody has one. If not, we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I think just looking ahead to the Baylor game for Michigan State, I think this is gonna mean. I think this means a lot for MSU,
Hmm.
just because, you know, even if they lose, I think it's not a mark on their Big Ten record or anything like that. And if they lose, it's probably not their worst loss of the season either, because they have lost to Duke and Arizona already this year and still
Right.
have Wisconsin's still a top 25 team. They still have to play Purdue. Uh but I think if they win, I think that means a lot. I think that
Yeah.
that means that what they did in the last 6 days, went to something good, and they figured something out amongst themselves. And it's really just hard to pinpoint kind of where the issues lay, because we do know like what the issues are on the court, but it kind of feels like there is something off the court, whether it's a team dynamic, or just chemistry isn't right, or whatever it may be. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like a MSU kind of team of past, even the years that they were 10 seeds or a 9 seed team. It doesn't feel the same. So we'll see. Maybe they figure it out this Saturday, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, no, I definitely look at it more as an opportunity than something
Mm,
to dread. Just because if you manage to get the win, that's a quad one win. That's one of the
mm,
metrics that the committee uses when they put together the field of 68 for the NCAA tournament. So it's an opportunity for a quad one win. Quad one losses don't really hurt you all that much because they're viewed as good losses, if you will. You mentioned that Michigan State already has a couple of those on the,
yeah.
if you want to call that on the resume, but yeah, you've played a couple quad one games against Duke and Arizona State. I don't know if James Madison would quantify. I don't. I'm assuming that would be a quad two. That's based on the net rankings, which is a kind of advanced analytic look at college basketball. But the committee uses that, so it's an opportunity. Looking forward to
Mm,
seeing, as you said, what happened over these last 6 days. That what changes have been made. I would like to see, Izzo be a little bit more. He's hinted at some changes in the past, and we might see it for a game or something like that, but they don't seem to stick. Maybe
mm,
something a little bit more drastic. I will say, I thought Malik Hall played very well against Nebraska, and under the weather as well. So, or coming off of that. And there was some missed offensive rebounds, but again, a guy who hadn't practiced for a number of days and was recovering from flu-like symptoms, to score 22 points and to kind of put some of that scoring load on him. I thought was good. I thought we saw a better performance out of AJ Hogard. Again, we still see some of those lapses. There was a possession late where he held the ball too long and gave it up to Tyson right at the end of the shot clock and things like that. So again, still some things to clean up as always. But I thought we saw a better version of AJ against Nebraska. Jaden Akins was better, still kind of faded down the stretch. We talked about that in the last show
mm,
as well, where he had 10 points with 13 minutes left in the game, had 10 points, and then he took one shot the rest of the game. Just would like to see him to be more consistently involved in the offense, but again, at least shot the ball a little bit better. Did reach double digits in scoring. So again, there was some positive signs in the game. Just would have liked to seen them pull it out, but didn't go down that way. All right, with that, Aiden, let's call it a night. Again, appreciate you guys tuning in to the show. As always, go check out our website, si.com. college/Michigan State. This is where all of our content is as far as stories. We have the Aiden Chiles story is up right now. Brandon Tullis committing today. That story's up there as well. And you can also find those stories at our Facebook page there at the bottom of your screen at Spartan Nation. This has been the Spartan Nation Podcast. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time.